The gray wood does not forgive. Seraphine learned that the way she learned most painful things, not from a lesson, but from an absence. One evening her father walked into those trees with his hunting knife and his easy smile, and the trees kept him. The knife came back. He did not. That was 15 years ago. She has walked this edge every dusk since, not because she has forgotten the danger, but because forgetting was never an option, when the herbs she needs to keep people alive grow thickest where the light dies. She moves quickly tonight, fingers stained dark with night-root, basket half full, one eye always on the borderline. The border law lives in her body the way old grief does, not thought about, just carried. Any unmated male found wandering foreign territory is taken immediately to the front lines. No exceptions, no appeals. She has watched that law hollow out 3 families on her street alone. She has held the hands of women who stopped sleeping and never quite started again. She is not looking for trouble. Then she sees him. Face down in the frost-stiffened grass at the gray wood's edge, enormous, even collapsed, dark hair matted with dried blood, wearing traveling clothes that were once fine and are now evidence of something gone terribly, violently wrong. Her healer's mind moves before the rest of her catches up. She is already kneeling, already pressing 2 fingers to the side of his throat before the rational part of her brain finishes forming the thought, "Do not touch him." His pulse answers her, strong, stubborn, furious, fighting. Then the patrol horns sound through the trees, closer than they should be, much closer. She does not think. She grabs him by the collar with both hands and pulls. He is enormous and she is not, and it does not matter, because something older than reason has taken over, and it is not interested in the odds. By the time the patrol torches flicker through the far tree line, her cottage door is shut and bolted, and there is a stranger bleeding onto her floor. She works through the night without stopping. The fever breaks just before midnight. His eyes open, pale gray, the color of deep winter water, and even barely conscious, barely present, the authority in that gaze hits her wolf like a fist. Her wolf goes completely, unnervingly still. Seraphine does not sleep. At first light, 3 sharp knocks crack through the silence. Seraphine, the elder's son, his voice carefully, deliberately calm in the way that means it is anything but. "We heard there was a stranger near the gray wood last night." Her hand stills on her herb knife. Behind her, in the back room, she hears the stranger's breathing change. He is awake, and he is listening. Seraphine does not hesitate. That is the thing about decisions made in the dark. By morning they have already become a kind of bone-deep commitment that hesitation cannot touch. She opens the door just wide enough. Aldrich, the elder's son, stands on her path with a lantern and a smile that does not reach his eyes. He is the kind of man who delivers threats in the tone of a neighbor asking after your garden. She has never trusted him. She trusts him less now. "We heard the patrol passed this way twice," he says pleasantly. "Unusual for a quiet night. My mate arrived ill from a long road." The lie leaves her mouth clean and certain, the way only a decision already made can sound. "The fever kept me occupied. I apologize for not sending word." Something moves behind Aldrich's eyes. calculation, then a slow nod. Of course. I hope he recovers quickly. His gaze drifts past her shoulder, just briefly, just enough, before he turns and walks away. She closes the door, bolts it, turns around. Cale is sitting up in the doorway of the back room. He should not be upright. He is gray with the effort of it, jaw set against pain he is absolutely refusing to show, and those winter water eyes are completely, unnervingly alert. He heard every word. She can see it in his face, the rapid, tactical reassessment of a man recalculating his position. She speaks before he can. You will rest. You will recover. You will not contradict anything I say to anyone in this village. She keeps her voice low, and her arms crossed, and her gaze level. When you are well enough to travel north, you will go, and we will both proceed as though none of this happened. Those are the terms. They are not negotiable. He studies her the way men study terrain before a battle. Then he says, "You don't know who I am. I know you needed saving. That's enough for now." A pause. Something shifts in his expression, something she cannot name and does not try to. "Cale," he says quietly, "Alpha King of the Northern Realm." The cottage does not change. The fire still burns, the herbs still hang drying from the rafters, and yet the room becomes immediately, specifically, terrifyingly smaller. She does not move. She will not give him the satisfaction of a flinch. "The terms stand," she says, "king or commoner." Something almost imperceptible crosses his face, almost like relief. Agreed. His eyes hold hers for a moment that lasts slightly too long. Then, quietly, "You are not afraid of me." She looks at him steadily. "I've sat beside men dying of fever before. Fear seemed like a waste of time." She turns and walks out. The silence behind her stretches. Then, barely audible through the wall, the Alpha King of the Northern Realm exhales. Long, slow, like a man who has been holding his breath for weeks and has only just now remembered he is allowed to stop. Outside, down the village path, Aldrich pauses and looks back at her cottage window. The deception requires him to be visible. That is the first problem. The second problem is that Cale, stripped of his crown, his armor, and every external scaffold his authority usually rests on, turns out to be unnervingly good at being human. He carries Marin's firewood without being asked. Not performatively, not with the careful deliberateness of a man trying to appear humble, just quietly, the way someone does when they notice a thing that needs doing and their hands are free. Marin accepts this without comment, which means she has already decided something about him that she has not shared with Seraphine yet. That alone is cause for concern. He sits with the elder men each evening and listens more than he speaks. The elders who have spent decades being deferred to and therefore can smell genuine attention at considerable distance, warm to him with a speed that Seraphine finds professionally alarming. He learns every village child's name within 4 days. 4 days. Seraphine has a neighbor who has lived here 11 years and still calls the miller's son the tall one. The village watches all of this with the focused, unblinking attention of a community that has known Seraphine for 30 years and has never, not once, seen her allow anyone to stand close enough to hand her something without stepping back first. They watch Kale move through their streets. Then they watch Seraphine watch Kale. Then they look at each other and say absolutely nothing, which is the loudest thing a small village knows how to do. His wolf, for its part, has developed opinions about Seraphine that he finds completely unprofessional and is handling by pretending they are not happening. It is not working. Every time she moves through the same room, efficient, unhurried, smelling of night root and wood smoke, and something underneath both that his wolf has catalogued with an attention to detail he did not authorize, the pretending gets harder. He does not examine this. He is a king. He is recovering. He has larger problems. Then Lyra happens. Lyra is 6 years old, gap-toothed, and constitutionally incapable of social caution. She catches Kale's sleeve at the well on a gray Tuesday morning with the grip of a child who has decided she deserves an answer and is prepared to wait all day for one. "What does it feel like," she asks, "belonging to Seraphine?" The question lands somewhere unguarded. He looks down at her for a moment that goes on slightly longer than any casual answer would require. "I'm still finding out," he says quietly. Lyra accepts this with great seriousness and runs away. Kale stands at the well for a moment in the cold air, looking at nothing in particular. That evening, Seraphine asks him flatly, not looking up from the salve she is grinding, what he told her. He answers honestly. The mortar keeps moving for exactly 3 rotations. Then it stops. "You should have said something vague," she says. Her voice is completely level. Her hands have not resumed moving. The silence stretches between them like something with weight. Neither of them speaks. Then Marin sets down her cup from across the room with a small, deliberate sound. Both of them look at her. She is looking at the fire with the serene expression of a woman who is absolutely not listening and has heard every single word. "The night root needs grinding," she says mildly, to no one in particular. Seraphine picks up the mortar. Her hands resume moving, but her jaw is set in the particular way it gets when she is feeling something she has decided not to feel. And Kale watches her from across the firelight with an expression he is not managing as carefully as he thinks he is. Outside, the wind picks up hard along the graywood tree line, the kind that comes before something, not after. And somewhere in the dark at the village's eastern edge, a horse shifts its weight. Bridle metal catches the last of the light. Varric's riders, still, watching. They have not left. The rain decides everything. It comes down hard just before nightfall, the kind that turns roads to rivers and keeps even the most determined men indoors. And Seraphine watches it sheet against the window and feels the walls of the cottage move 3 inches closer. Marin reads the room the way she has always read rooms. She takes her tea, squeezes Seraphine's hand once without explanation, and goes to bed early. But before she goes, she stops beside Kale's chair. She does not make a production of it. She simply rests her hand briefly on his shoulder, the uninjured one, because she has been paying attention to which one that is, and says quietly, without looking at him. She has not let anyone sit at that fire with her in 15 years. Do not waste it. She goes to her room. The door clicks shut. Cale looks at the door for a long moment, then at the fire. And then there are no more tasks to perform, no herbs to grind, no roles to hide behind, just the two of them and a fire burning itself slowly down to nothing, and rain filling every silence before it can become comfortable. Cale sits with his forearms resting on his knees, staring at the flames. He looks, for the first time since she found him bleeding in the frost, like something other than a king in recovery. He looks tired in the way that has nothing to do with wounds. His gaze lifts to the hunting knife above the hearth. "Tell me about it," he says. Not a deflection, not conversation. He actually wants to know. She can always tell the difference. She looks at the knife for a long moment, then she tells him. Her father's last morning, the easy way he smiled when he left, like danger was something that happened to other families. The border war law that took him the same way it takes everyone, without ceremony or apology, because unmated males in foreign territory are a resource, not a person, as far as the law is concerned. What it made her into afterward, the girl who learned to mend broken things because someone had to. The woman who quietly, methodically stopped allowing herself to want anything that could be conscripted or buried or simply gone. She says it plainly. No self-pity, just the shape of it, laid out like a wound being assessed. Cale listens the way she has watched him listen to no one else, entirely, with the stillness of a man who has trained himself to receive hard things without flinching away from them. When she finishes, the fire has dropped lower. The rain has not. She asks him the question she has been assembling for days. Not about Varric, not about the throne or the conspiracy or the road back north. She asks what it costs to be a king who is not permitted to be wounded, to carry every decision alone because the one time he didn't. He goes quiet long enough that she thinks he will not answer. Then he does. The ambush, not as a military failure, but as a specific, surgical betrayal. Men he had allowed past the perimeter he keeps around everything that matters. Men who understood that the only way to bring him down was from inside. The shame that has nothing to do with pride and everything to do with having trusted, and having that trust converted into a weapon and turned directly back on him, while his people paid the cost of his miscalculation. His voice does not break. It gets quieter. That is worse. "You were not undone by weakness," she says. The fire spits once. "You were undone by people who needed you weakened." He looks at her, not the way he looks at a woman who has been useful to him, not the way he looks at an unexpected complication requiring management. He looks at her the way a man looks at something he did not know existed until it was standing directly in front of him, and now he cannot remember what he was looking at before. Neither of them moves. The fire makes its decision. The last ember breathes out. The darkness takes the room. The rain fills the silence. A beat. 2. I'll get more wood. Her voice, steady. Seraphine. His voice, lower than she has heard it, lower than a king's voice needs to be. Silence. Thank you. Not for the wood, not for the fever nights or the herbs or the lie she told at her own front door. She knows exactly what he means. It sits between them in the dark with a weight she was not prepared for. She does not answer for a long moment. Get some sleep, she says finally. She stands. She moves toward the door. Her hand finds the latch. She does not immediately lift it. Outside, beneath the rain, something moves along the eastern tree line. Heavy, deliberate, the sound of more than one horse standing very still in the dark, waiting for the rain to stop. Varick's men have not moved on. They are getting closer. Rena finds her alone in the herb garden just after dawn, which means she has been waiting for the right moment. Women like Rena do not wander into conversations. They arrive at them deliberately, having already decided what they are going to say and how much it is going to cost the other person to hear it. She does not open with pleasantries. She opens with a name. A village in the next valley, a woman 3 winters ago who made the same claim Seraphine is making now, an unmated male, a borrowed story, a deception that felt necessary in the moment. She tells Seraphine what pack law prescribed when it unraveled, not the formal language, the lived version, what actually happened, what that woman's life looked like after. Seraphine keeps her hands in the soil and her face composed and listens to every word. I'm not asking whether it's true, Rena says quietly. I'm telling you what it costs if anyone decides it is. She pauses. The morning birds are very loud suddenly. Make sure he is worth it before it costs you everything. She leaves without waiting for an answer. Seraphine stays kneeling in the dirt long after her footsteps fade, her hands completely still among the herbs, staring at nothing with the expression of a woman who has been pretending something is simple and has just run out of road to pretend on. She has been calling this an arrangement, a practical solution to an immediate problem. She has been very disciplined about that word, arrangement, the way you are disciplined about a wound you are not ready to look at directly. That afternoon, Marin finds her still at the work table, grinding the same handful of dried root she has been grinding for 20 minutes without result. Marin sits across from her and says nothing for a while. Then, "Your father used to grind herbs like that when he was trying to not think about something." Seraphine's hands stop. "You are not him," Marin says gently. "You do not have to protect yourself from everything that moves." She stands, presses a kiss to Seraphine's hair, the way she did when Seraphine was small and the world was already asking too much of her. Some things are worth the cost. The trouble is, you have to decide before you know what the bill is. She leaves Seraphine alone with that and the still unground root. That evening, Seraphine tells herself she is standing in the doorway for the air. Cale is at the woodpile, moving through a slow, controlled sequence, testing his returning strength with the focused attention of a soldier taking inventory of his own body. He is not fully recovered. He knows it. He works anyway, methodical and unself-conscious in the gray evening light, and her wolf moves toward him through every wall she has ever built, like those walls are made of smoke. Not with want, not even with warmth, with something older and more certain than either, a recognition that bypasses thought entirely and lands somewhere so deep she feels it in her teeth. The wolf does not weigh the cost. The wolf already knows. Seraphine grips the doorframe. Then, from the eastern road, the sound of horses. But these riders do not stop at the village edge. They ride directly to the elders' hall, and the man at their head dismounts with the particular ease of someone who does not need to announce himself, because the announcement is already implied in everything about him. He is not what she expected, not crude, not overtly threatening. He is precise, cordial, the kind of dangerous that never raises its voice because it has never needed to. Lord Varick smooths his riding gloves and looks around Ashfen with warm, attentive eyes. His gaze travels the village slowly, the well, the elders' hall, the path between the hall and the cottage at the far end of the road. It stops there. Seraphine does not move from the doorway. She does not reach for Cale. She simply watches as Varick's eyes find her cottage with the unhurried certainty of a man who has already been told exactly where to look. He smiles pleasantly, looks away, follows the elder inside. Behind her, she hears Cale go completely still. "He's here," Cale says. His voice is very quiet, stripped of everything except the truth of it. "Yes," she says. Neither of them moves. The gray evening settles around the cottage like something closing in. Inside the elders' hall, Varick's laughter carries warmly through the walls. Varick does not look like a man who starts wars. That is the most dangerous thing about him. He rides in at mid-morning with 6 men and the unhurried ease of someone arriving at a place he already considers his. No drawn weapons, no raised voices. He accepts the elders' hospitality with genuine-seeming warmth, compliments the village on its positioning along the valley road, asks after the harvest with the attentive interest of a lord who cares about his people. He is precise and pleasant and immaculately controlled, and Seraphine watches him from across the elders' hall and feels her skin crawl with the specific wrongness of a wound that presents clean on the surface. He is not here to threaten. He is here to conclude. The elder's son does not mean to do it. That is perhaps the most devastating part. He is simply a man who has calculated that his village's safety sits on one side of a scale, and a healer's secret sits on the other, and he has made the only choice a coward knows how to make. He leans toward Varick's captain during a lull in conversation, and whatever he says takes less than 30 seconds, and the captain's eyes move immediately and with great precision to the far end of the hall, where Cale is already standing. The silence that falls is the kind that happens when a room full of people all understand something at the same moment. Cale does not perform it. He walks to the center of the hall and he speaks, and his voice carries the particular weight of a man who has stopped managing how he is perceived and started simply telling the truth. He tells them what the border wars actually are, not a necessary evil, not an unfortunate constant, a machine maintained deliberately by men who profit from the grief of villages exactly like this one. He names the years, he names the valleys, he names the families who sent men north and received nothing back but silence and a folded notification. He tells them what the northern realm's peace has been holding back and what will move south the moment it collapses. He does not ask them to choose him. He sits down and lets the truth sit with them. The village looks at Varric's cordial smile. Then they look at the man who spent 2 weeks naming their children's names, carrying their wood, listening to their old men's stories without impatience or performance. They look at him the way people look at someone they have already decided about without realizing it. The elder speaks first. His voice does not waver. This man is a guest of Ashfen. Something moves behind Varric's eyes, not anger, something colder. The cordiality does not leave his face, it simply stops reaching his eyes entirely, and what is underneath is precise and entirely without warmth. He says pleasantly, he sets down his cup, he straightens his cuffs. He will be direct. He looks at Kale with the expression of a man reading aloud from a document he wrote himself. The Alpha King of the Northern Realm will be taken into his protection immediately. The woman who harbored and falsely claimed him will be taken into formal pack questioning. Anyone who interferes will be documented and addressed in the settlement discussions that follow. He says all of this in the same tone he used to compliment the harvest. His men move. Seraphine is in her doorway before they reach the path. She does not step back. She holds the frame and looks at the 4 armed men crossing her garden with the steady composure of a woman who has already decided she will not be moved and is simply waiting for the rest of the world to catch up. Then Kale is at the gate. No crown, no armor. The traveling clothes she mended herself, still carrying the careful stitching at the left shoulder where the wound came closest. He looks across the frost-stiffened yard of Varric with an expression she has not seen on him before, not the controlled authority of a recovering king, not the careful quiet of a man protecting his position, something stripped back to its absolute foundation, something finished with being careful. "You should leave," he says, quietly, the way a man says a thing he means completely. Varric tilts his head. The cordial smile returns, precise as a blade. Or what, exactly? The cold morning air sits between them, and Kale moves. He does not wait for permission. He does not perform a warning. He simply moves, and the yard explodes. Kale fights the way she suspected he would. No elegance, no theater, just grinding, economical brutality, every movement calculated to extract maximum damage at minimum cost to a body that is not yet finished healing. He knows his limits, and he works inside them with the grim precision of a man who has survived worse odds than this by being smarter rather than stronger. Varric's first man goes down in 4 seconds. The second takes longer and costs him. She sees it in the way Kale's left side compensates, the shoulder she stitched pulling against the movement, the wound she spent 2 weeks closing beginning to lose that argument. She should go inside. Every sensible instinct she has ever developed says, go inside. She does not move, because she is watching something that reaches past sense entirely. Through all of it, the shifting positions, the brutal tactical retreats, the moments where Varric's men press him back and the odds tilt badly, one thing never changes. Not once. Not for a single moment. Kale does not leave her side unguarded. Every repositioning, every sacrifice of advantage, every grinding exchange that costs him something he cannot afford to spend, he absorbs it rather than open the angle toward her door. He does not look at her while he does it. He does not make it a gesture or a declaration. He simply will not move in that direction, as if her safety is not a decision he is making in the moment, but a line drawn so far in advance it has become structural. Something in her chest cracks open quietly and does not close again. Varric himself enters it when his men are not enough, and for a moment, a long, terrible moment, the weight and the reach and Kale's compromised strength make it brutal and close, and she grips the doorframe so hard her knuckles go white. But Kale fights dirty when he has to. He fights like a man with something specific to protect and no interest whatsoever in how it looks. Varric hits the frost hard. The sound carries across the entire yard. The silence that follows is enormous. Varric's remaining men look at each other with the expressions of people performing a rapid reassessment of their professional commitments. One by one they step back, then still, then done. The pre-dawn quiet settles over Ashfen like a held breath, finally completely released. Seraphine crosses the yard. She comes to stand beside him, her shoulder against his arm, exactly where she has always fit without either of them planning it. He is breathing in the controlled, deliberate way of someone managing serious pain with the last of their discipline. The left shoulder of his mended shirt is dark and spreading. He has torn the wound open completely. He looks at it briefly, with a detached assessment of a soldier, and then he looks at her. "That was not a deception," he says. Not an apology, not a declaration designed to land well, just the truth, stated plainly, because he is done with every other way of saying things. She looks at him, with those pale amber eyes that have been reading him accurately, reading past every wall and every performance and every carefully managed presentation of himself since the very first night when he was barely conscious and she still saw straight through to the bone of him. "I know," she says quietly. "It hasn't been for a while." Neither of them moves. The frost breathes cold between them, and neither of them feels it. Behind them, Marin stands in the cottage doorway. She looks at her daughter's face and at the king her daughter is standing beside, and she says absolutely nothing, which is how Seraphine knows her mother has already decided. Marin only says nothing when she approves. 3 days later, the Northern Realms scouts ride in from the North Road. 6 of them. Professional expressions, good horses, the careful neutrality of people who have spent 3 weeks not knowing if their king was alive and are now managing their relief with great discipline. They bring clean traveling clothes, fresh horses, the wordless, unmistakable weight of a kingdom that has been running on held breath and needs its king back before the cracks become fractures. Kale prepares to leave with the focused efficiency of a man giving all his attention to practical tasks because the alternative is feeling something he does not yet know how to carry. He sits with the elder men. He answers the children's questions with genuine patience. He accepts Marin's jar of fever salve, because she presses it into his hands with an authority that does not invite discussion, and tells him plainly not to be an idiot about things that matter. He does not go to find Seraphine, because he does not trust himself to say the right thing, because everything he would say would come out as asking, and he has already taken enough from her, and the asking would cost her something she has not offered, and he will not. He walks toward the road, and stops. She is already there. Traveling clothes, the good ones, hair braided back in the way she does it when she expects to be moving for a long time, her bag sitting at her feet in the frost with the deliberate placement of something set down and not picked back up impulsively. She is looking at him with the expression she gets when she has finished a calculation and arrived at a result she intends to honor regardless of the cost. He looks at the bag. He looks at her face. "You are certain," he says. It is not a question. His voice does not quite stay level. She treats it like one anyway, because he needs to hear the answer out loud, and she has always been able to tell what people need beneath what they are asking. The scouts look at the sky, at the road, at their horses, at anything that is not their king's face, which has done something none of them have a professional framework for. The frost sits between Seraphine and Cale and the whole long road north. She opens her mouth, and the screen cuts to black. She does not make him wait. 30 years, she says. Her voice is steady in the cold morning air, the way it is always steady. Not because she is not feeling anything, but because she has never once let what she feels make her less precise. 30 years of being careful, of holding things loosely so losing them would not break me, of calling that wisdom when it was just fear with better posture. She looks at him directly. She has always looked at him directly. It has not once stopped the world from asking hard things of me anyway. A scout's horse shifts its weight. No one speaks. I built walls for 15 years, she continues, quieter now, which somehow makes it louder. And all they gave me was a very well-defended version of alone. She glances down at her bag, then back at him. I know what the road north costs. I know what a king's life costs the people standing beside him. I have run the full accounting, and I am not standing here because I missed something. The faintest thing moves across her face, not softness exactly, certainty. I am standing here because I did not, and I would very much like to stop standing in the frost discussing it if you do not mind. Cale looks at her for one long moment. Then he reaches out his hand, not a summons, not a king extending an offer to a subject, just a man on a road reaching toward the specific person he would be leaving behind if he turned away, and knowing, with a clarity he has not felt about anything in 15 years, that turning away is the one thing he is no longer capable of. Seraphine picks up her bag and takes his hand. Behind her, the cottage door is open. Marin stands in the frame with her arms folded and her expression composed, and she says absolutely nothing. Not a word, not a sound. Seraphine feels it without turning around, and something in her chest settles into place, like a bone finding its joint. Marin only says nothing when she approves. They ride north with the morning at their backs, and the long road opening ahead, and her shoulder against his arm in the way that was never practiced and never planned, and fits so precisely it feels like something that was always true, waiting for them to stop moving around it. The scouts look at the road, at the sky, at their horses' ears, at anything that is not their king's face, which has shed 15 years of careful management and is doing something open and unguarded and entirely without apology that none of them have a professional category for. One of them clears his throat quietly. Another develops a sudden great interest in the tree line. They are all very focused on their riding. The gray wood falls behind them. The border war villages fall behind. The frost-stiffened paths, the hunting knife above the hearth, the 15 years of careful mornings and deliberate distances, and walls built so thoroughly she had forgotten what she was keeping out. This is not a fairy tale. Fairy tales end with the danger behind you, the danger ahead, the politics, the court that did not expect a healer from a southern village, the men who helped Varric and are still breathing, the kingdom that needs a king who has just discovered he also needs a person, is real and substantial, and neither of them is pretending otherwise. But here is what is also real. She chose this road with her eyes open. He reached across the frost, knowing exactly what he was asking, and whatever comes next comes at both of them together, which is the only thing that is different from everything that came before, and the only thing, it turns out, that needed to change. Her wolf is quiet and certain beside his, not performing, not negotiating, simply present, the way it has been trying to tell her to be since the very first night when those winter water eyes opened and something in her went still, and she told herself it meant nothing, and her wolf found that position completely unpersuasive. The road opens north, long and cold and real. They ride toward it anyway, because they both know now, with the specific, unshakable knowledge of people who have seen the alternative clearly and chosen not to go back to it, what they would be riding away from. Home is not the place you were born into. It is the person you choose to ride toward, knowing the road and going anyway.